There was big news in Oklahoma City this week, and it wasn't the beatdown they gave to the Cleveland Cavaliers. No, this was from the promising young player Lu Dort. This sharpshooter surpassed Larry Legend in three-pointers made. Yes, in only a sixth season, he has more three-pointers than one of the top 10 greatest players of all time. Now that is a sentiment that is universally known for fans like you and me. Here in Basketball Universe, we don't question his greatness. He gets the utmost respect in these parts. But there are a lot of fans who don't feel the same way. In the XApp, there were some wild and completely trash takes for some of the OKC fans, which is what you'd come to expect from NBA Twitter. We've all seen some incredibly stupid takes that makes you stop scrolling just to reread what you just saw. Just so your brain could comprehend the levels and depths of stupidity that come from some of these people. It happens every day, no big deal. But I've noticed that every year, young fans keep lowering the bar on players who are supposedly better than Larry Bird. We've reached a point to where Lu Dort is now someone who would absolutely cook Larry Legend. One fan wrote after hearing the news of his three-point achievement, Larry Bird was a fraud and not who people say he was. Another fan decided to dump their trash take by saying Larry Bird wouldn't sniff a roster in the current NBA. And lastly, a fan boldly claimed Dort is better than Larry Bird all time. That was the apparent discourse from some of the fans. Is Lu Dort better than Larry Bird? This is a premise that we're certainly not going to entertain here. We're not going to waste any time or brain cells trying to debate this topic. What's more interesting for me, though, is how these younger fans value greatness and why they always pick on Larry Bird. They do this for the same reason as always. His lack of athleticism. He doesn't have a bag or whatever that means. He doesn't look the part. However, one would think that this generation would value Larry Bird even more than the previous ones. Two of the best players in the game today, Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic, had the same characteristics that make Bird unappealing to these same young fans. They're white, unathletic, and slow. But they are dominating this era full of supposed superior athletes, the same way Larry Bird did in the golden era of basketball. And all these players from that era have such a profound respect and appreciation for him. That includes Michael Jordan. You would think his stamp of approval would mean something to these youngins. There is no one that he respects more than Larry Bird, and he's always been vocal about that. I know they respect his opinion, but that's not even enough. This shouldn't be surprising after seeing the way Anthony Edwards spoke about Jordan's era. There's a lack of appreciation and ignorance towards basketball in the 20th century. For those who actually take the time to watch the games, they don't know what they're watching. The game looks totally different than it does today. From what I've heard, they equate skill to your dunking, ball handling, and shooting abilities. So they've been drilled in their heads that post-up and mid-range shots are not smart basketball plays, that threes are more valuable than twos. They're going to look negatively towards the way the game used to be played. Because, double step back threes are the much more smart basketball play than a 10-foot fadeaway shot. If the double standard in the Larry Bird discourse isn't enough, we have some fans claiming that one player is greater than the other for the simple fact that one has more career three-pointers. Out of the hundreds of GOAT debates that I've seen throughout the years, that is one stat that hardly ever gets brought up: career three-pointers. It's never a factor that tips the scale. This makes sense because nearly all the players that are in the GOAT discussion have played in an era where three-pointers either didn't exist or weren't being utilized. There is no reason to bring this stat up for a player like Larry Bird. You would think that this is common knowledge. But again, ignorance is blissful, I guess. But maybe the discourse is changing along with the game. The three-point shot, as we know, is the most important and utilized shot in the league. The more threes you hit, the more valuable of a player you are. In 2025, it makes perfect sense to compare the number of threes one player makes to the next. What doesn't make sense is holding that against a player from the older generations who were specifically told not to shoot threes. Listen, there are a lot of young fans who think they know the game and want to express their opinions. Before you go out and buy the equipment that you need to get started, there's something very important that you need to know. You have to know the history of the game. You absolutely cannot make a respectable top 10, top 20, or top 50 players of all time list if you don't appreciate the history of the NBA. If not, your list will be trash and you will be ridiculed for not knowing your stuff, as we done here for those random Twitter dudes. I was fortunate enough to have a dad that sat me down and we watched old Larry Bird games. As I started taking this seriously, I try to get as informed as possible about the league's history. I don't claim to be the smartest NBA content creator out there, but I can say with all my heart that I know more about the history of the game than the average millennial does. I'm 100% confident of it. If you don't have someone that can teach you about the history of the game, there are plenty of games out there from all the way back from the 60s that you can watch. As far as the three-point shot, it goes without saying that Larry would have shot many more threes if you were playing today. He would benefit greatly from playing in today's game. We obviously can't change the past, but there's one thing that will never change. The basketball principles that were important in the 80s are equally as important today. As far as what makes a player great, what makes a player a champion. With Larry Bird, he is one of the very few players where stats don't even tell half the story. The way he could demoralize a team and excel in literally every aspect of the game needs to be seen to be believed. You can say that no one affecting winning better than he did. No amount of three-point shots could ever be more valuable than those winning qualities. Larry Bird always had that. That's why he would be great in any era that you put him in. If you don't know that, then you don't know your stuff. You don't know about the game of basketball. Unfortunately, even with all the talent that's in the NBA, I don't see anyone that is quite like Larry Legend.